All right, today we're going to zoom in, way, way in, past your skin, past your bones, all the way down to the most basic, fundamental component of you, me, and pretty much every living thing on this planet, the cell.
No, seriously, have you ever actually stopped to think about that? If you could just zoom past everything you see, the skin, the bones, the organs, what's the absolute base unit that makes you, well, you? That's the big question we're diving into today.
And here's the core idea you want to hang on to. Just picture a massive skyscraper, right? It's built from thousands, maybe millions of individual bricks. Well, for every single living thing, from a tiny plant to a giant whale, cells are those exact same fundamental bricks.
So, okay, if cells are the bricks, what exactly are they? Let's get a little closer and really understand this fundamental unit of life. This is where that whole brick analogy gets a really cool upgrade. See, a cell isn't just a structural block that sits there, it's a functional one. So you should think of it less like a simple brick and more like a tiny, self-contained factory that's actively doing all the jobs needed for life. So all of life is built from these little cellular factories. Sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Well, here's where it gets interesting. It turns out that across all of nature, there are really only two main blueprints for how these little factories are designed. And that's a pretty wild thought when you think about it. Every single living thing you can possibly imagine, from some microbe you can't even see to a massive blue whale, is built using just one of these two basic designs. And here they are, the prokaryotic cell and the eukaryotic cell. Now, just by looking at the names, you might guess one is a little more complex than the other, and you would be absolutely right. Let's find out why. So what is it that makes them so different? What's the big deal? To figure that out, we have to go inside and look for the one key feature that really separates these two blueprints for life. The whole difference, it all comes down to something called organelles. Now, I know that sounds like a super technical word, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You know how your body has organs to do specific jobs? Well, a cell has organelles, tiny little compartments that each perform their own specialized task. And here's the divide in the simplest terms I can think of. Prokaryotic cells, they don't have these specialized internal rooms. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are full of them. A good way to picture it is to compare like an open-plan studio apartment to a big house that has lots of different rooms. A kitchen, a bedroom, a workshop, each with its own specific purpose.
So what kind of rooms are we talking about here? Well, you've got the nucleus, that's the cell's command center. You have the mitochondria, those are the power plants. And then you have things like Golgi bodies, which kind of act like the manufacturing and shipping departments. And having all these compartments is a total game changer. It lets eukaryotic cells run thousands of different chemical reactions all at the same time in different rooms without anything getting in the way of anything else. It's really what allows for the amazing complexity of life as we know it.
So, to bring this all back home, a bacterium is your classic prokaryote, that simple, super efficient studio apartment. But the cells that make up you and me and every plant and animal you can see, we're all made of eukaryotic cells, basically mansions packed with all these specialized organelles working together in perfect harmony. Okay, so we've got two different blueprints, the simple studio and the complex mansion. But let's zoom back out for a second, because there is one incredible universal truth that applies to every single cell, no matter which design it's using. And this is where it all comes together. Metabolism is really just a fancy word for all the chemical reactions that make something alive. Breathing, turning food into energy, growing, literally everything. And every single one of those reactions happens inside the microscopic walls of a cell. And that's why this is so important. It doesn't matter if it's a simple bacterium or a complicated neuron in your brain. The cell itself is the stage. It's the tiny little theater where the entire drama of life is playing out moment by moment. So, if we can agree that every cell is a tiny engine and it's performing all these metabolic activities that define our very existence, it leaves us with one last, really fascinating question. What exactly are these engines running on? What's the fuel that powers life itself?